The Slingers, though, are much better than the regular type of gutter runners, given that they are a more traditional type ranged unit, you know, with 140 range, forward firing only, but still have the Vanguard deployment physical resistance. Stock also can come with poison, but in this role, that 90 unit models and the 120 range, they more importantly also have a regular skirmish ammunition count, so they can actually do some pretty decent damage at range. Here, I've got one mixed in with two Skaven Slave Slingers, and this is one thing you can do as well, is use them to kind of support a line of Slingers. I mean, you can do that also with the 360 shooting ones with regular Death Runners, but there's no, 360 shooting Skaven Slaves, unfortunately. I've also got Lord Skrolk here, an Assassin, Plague Monks. I'm up against Red Wedding Planner. Once again, more Skaven Slaves up front. Chieftain, we've got 3 Rat Ogres, including the Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep, a couple of Wolf Rats, 1 Magic, 1 Poison. Up against the Dark Elves here, got a couple of Harpies, lots of Light Cavalry, 4 Dark Riders, Corsairs, couple of Dark Shards, 2 Bolt Throwers, Malice Darkblade, Blackguard, and Shadow Sorcerer here in the center. Malice looking very fabulous as always. Love the red plumes in this. I don't know, the Blackguard just looks so appropriate in this landscape for some reason. They're definitely going to be a good time invading the realms of chaos. My mortars are going to open up here and start to get the party started with a little bit of DPS. Of course, Dark Elves generally low HP. This should be pretty good there, but also Dark Elves generally low armor, hence the 4 Plague Monks. I think Plague Monks are actually pretty underrated in this matchup, especially given the kind of infantry meta right now. They can trade pretty well and do a lot of Dark Elf infantry. Blackguard do give me a little bit of pause, but we're going to get a charge on the Corsairs here. Let's watch this. Corsairs and Plague Monks should trade pretty well into each other, but I'd imagine the Plague Monk's HP advantage probably allows them to win that. But Harpies come down, they get on my mortars. I'm not going to notice that. The Bolt Thrower's been doing a good job anyway. Nice Penumbral Pendulum as well. Does take some chunks out of my Plague Monks, but here I'm just counterfiring. You can see the Slinger line counterfiring in, and of course the Poison just kind of adds an extra effect to this. With the very cost-effective Skaven Slave Slingers and the decent damage of the regular Gutter Runners. The Gutter Runners also, with their melee stats, can somewhat protect, not really necessarily protect, but sort of act as a surprising anchor, right? Because some people might just mouse over the Skaven Slave Slingers and say, like, oh, it's just a line of Skaven Slaves, not actually check each one individually. Might not see that there's a Gutter Runner unit even mixed in there. I mean, of course, if they're paying attention, you can slightly see the difference. It's a little bit hard. Up close, it's easier. You can see the kind of poisoned sling stones versus the regular sling stones. But this Blackguard is holding quite well in the center, doing just fine. The Chieftain's going to be fighting them. Managed to catch the Caster with Skrolk and the Assassin, which is great. But Murderous Prowess kicked off, also made a mess of the backline with these Wolf Rats here. We got a good engagement initially out on that flank with the Cavalry. Excuse me, and with the Rat Ogres in support. Now the Cavalry coming back. We're going to get a little bit of a rear charge here on those Rat Ogres. And Malice fighting here in the center. Wolf Rats, you got to be very careful. They can be great, but their leadership is so terrible that, yeah, oftentimes they will just run away. So you have to very much be on top of the micro. But we've collapsed so far, a decent amount. Great job here pulling the Bolt Thrower crew away to relative safety. This other Bolt Thrower, a mistake here, misclicks, brought it up on top of the plateau. But actually, it's kind of now somewhat protected by some of these units. I can't necessarily get at it very easily, so I'm just going to turn and shoot with my sling line. Unfortunately, there are 45 attack Bleak Swords with Murderous Prowess active moving in, so they're going to get on the Gutter Runners here, and that extra attack will help them trade pretty well. Of course, the Poison debuffing their weapon strength down to 24 is nice, and the physical resistance also helps in that respect as well, so they're not going to be hitting very hard, but they will be hitting a lot. But you can see how much this Gutter Runner Slinger holds up here and just allows these missiles to keep peppering, and more than anything, it can be about just the leadership, right? Leadership damage of having that ranged attack, but summon here from Skrolk, him and the Assassin, having a good time. With the Wolf Rats out in the distance, getting caught by some Harpies, and then countercharging the Harpies. The Plague Monks had also been chasing units around. Plague Monks pretty fast. Decently fast, but there's the summon. Got cancelled because I got knocked over. Or Skrolk got knocked over, I should say. Yeah, Dark Riders trying to avoid the chaff there. We check back in on the sling line to see. The gutter runners are pulling away, and that's right, trying to pull them back to safety. There's now 2 sad swords pushing up, and chieftain's broken, and other kind of local support has diminished, so might as well just try and pull back. I mean, the speed is pretty legit, even with strength and numbers still active. They have 49 speed, which is really fast. I think they might be the fastest infantry in the game. I actually have to check that. In any case, it's certainly an advantage to them. The snare nets as well, like these, if I'm on top of my micro, these bleak swords are not going to be able to catch me. But that's, you know, if I'm on top of my micro. But likewise, the bleak swords also dropping their attack order. Now, yeah, they're going to get fired at by the 2 slingers, which is great. I'm able to recover the chieftain and the plague monks. Malice did transform into Tsarkan, so he's now got the assassin caught up with some swordsmen. It's bad for me. And summons are starting to wear off. You can see here, these Blackguard have held through all of this. This is why Blackguard are the best halberds, in my opinion. I mean, there's not any terror here anyway, and some other halberds might hold to the bitter end, but these guys, the weapon strength is legit, leadership is legit, defense is legit, health is legit. I mean, it's got immune to psychology, everything you need. Again, not that I have any terror here, but eventually Scroll comes through, gets a summon to take out the Wayward Reaper Bolt Thrower. The caster's still hanging around though, and Chieftain also losing some support, but the Gutter Runners also still hanging around. You can see that this Slinger's rallied, so basically the sort of melee prowess of the Slingers here in this respect, sort of defending the other Slinger line, allows them to continue to operate, even though the Bleak Swords, you know, if that were just a regular Skaven Slave Slinger or even a Night Runner, probably they just are able to keep all of them routed. But Malice coming in here, nice Penumbral Pendulum as well, going to finish off the doggos. They had done so much work for me. Sad day for the Wolf Rats. They scurry away. Gonna get some more summons on the Blackguards in the distance as these Rat Ogres come through. Tsarkan trying to stay away from the Rat Ogres and the Assassin. He's basically on a timer, right? And with one more summon on these Blackguard, I should be okay. The Sling line eventually does get broken. At least the Gutter Runners get broken. The Skaven Slave Slingers are able to come back, though. Maybe get a few more shots in there. Also, Chieftain is doing just fine. Tsarkan has his sights set on Skrulk. He's trying to catch Skrulk and finish him off, which is definitely the right play here from Red Wedding Planner. If he can finish off Skrulk somehow and you know, inflict enough leadership penalties, he might be able to get a chain route. But he is, again, on a bit of a timer because of Tsarkan here taking damage. So enfeebling foe on Lord Skrulk, and he's just going to get straight up killed by Tsarkan, which is fine, actually, because you see that map-wide little buff pop. Of course, the Chieftain has this ability here, which is super thematic, and I love. Power Grab plus 8 leadership helps stave off the loss of Skrulk in terms of leadership, and he did manage to get one Spiteful Summon off before he died. So, I mean, these 5 Blackguard are still fighting, in case 4 now, 3, in case anyone's wondering. But yeah, the Sad Swords also, again, they go after the Chieftain. That leaves the Gutter Runners to come back and inflict just a little bit more poison damage, a little bit more leadership debuffs. If we take a look, they did not pay for themselves. They got pretty close, though. And in terms of tactical value, again, allowing those Skaven Slave Slingers to keep fighting longer, certainly that was nice. But Tsarkan, his time running short. Gonna try and come in and finish the Assassin. Nice little swipe from the Sorceress as well. The demon falls, not meant for this mortal plane, and I'm able to come away with the victory. Another very, very fun game with Red Wedding Planner, super close at the end of the day. There were a few times there where I thought he might be able to come back and get me. Initially, some pretty good engagements. Man, those Blackguard, round of applause for me. Literally held through everything. Yeah, I got an insane amount of value considering they really didn't have like large armored targets to fight. Also, I had some counters for them, but yeah, Red Wedding Planner also did a good job of shutting down my mortars. I think this is probably the Harpy that did that, considering they paid for themselves. For me, also, the Hounds paid for themselves. The real question, though, of course, you might be wondering, kind of look through the Rat Ogres. Yeah, 650 at the end of the day. Pretty nice round number for the Gutter Runners. And honestly, I think this is closer to the cost of what they should actually cost. Probably both variants. Even the Slingers, I think, will struggle to be cost-effective at times, but certainly there are some things you can do. We'll maybe talk more about that in just a second. Skaven Slave Slingers, cost-effective. We're able to trade well here as well. The Plague Monks, also nice. Skrulk doesn't get too much value. I did forget to bring his items, which is a possibility of a change here, but the Chieftain didn't end up getting much value, but the leadership maybe helped me hold out at the very end. Skaven did probably base for himself. He's pretty cheap. Nice Penumbral Pendulums, although not too much value. Lots of kill totals. Good to clear out the chaff there. And the Sad Swords also get really nice value. Fairly cost effective. Yeah. The ranged line with a little bit of a mixed bag. The Dark Riders, I think, is honestly where he lost it, just because I was able to kind of get a good initial engagement, which I didn't really highlight there on the left flank. I was kind of busy talking about the Slingers, but yeah, with just the Wolf Rats in combination with the Rat Ogres, I think I had some Spears in a supporting position as well. He just didn't get a great engagement, and then at one point they ran through the woods, and because of the Strider, the Wolf Rats caught them and sort of took out a couple units, and it snowballs a bit from there. Both the Bolt Throwers kind of playing into that light cavalry engagement, not going in his favor, but still, Zarkan ends up doing quite a bit of damage. A lot of that isn't reflected on Malice because it's a summon, of course, and we don't get summon damage at the moment, unfortunately. But anyway, let's just talk a little bit more about Gutter Runner Slingers. I definitely think they're more useful in more situations than the regular Gutter Runners. Of course, again, the ammunition count is a big thing. Literally double the ammunition and double the range. Slightly less damage, but only slightly so. 11 and 3, and yeah, 12 and 2. So they do lose 1 AP, which is a pretty significant deal. When you have 90 unit models, that plus 1 AP can matter. But I do find that they tend to be accurate in certain situations more. I don't know, that sometimes the shurikens can be surprisingly accurate. But the slings, I mean, shooting at large targets, certainly, and they can kind of blanket an area as well, and hit more unit models, potentially. So, in a way, they're less accurate, but also the range advantage is just significant enough that, yeah, overall damage output will be higher, given time to fire. And, like I said, supporting a regular slinger line, is something that you will see. And even, I mean, classically against Vampire Coast, I have seen literally builds of 8 slingers. This is something you can do if you really want to just fill the air with hailstones, and they will do a surprising amount of damage. I mean, just the high model count of all of these Skaven range units mean, against large targets especially, the bigger the target, basically, the more hits they're going to get on it, and it will do more damage kind of progressively. Even still, just shooting at regular units, I mean, such a saturation of missiles, you're bound to get some hits. 105 on Skaven Slave Slinger, still 90 on Gutter Runners is pretty good. I'm reminded of some other 90 model count skirmishers. Ungor Raiders here are probably a little bit better compared to Night Runners, considering the cost. They are more cost-effective, certainly, but the speed is something you pay for with the Clan Eshin units. And both Vanguard stock, one has expendable, one has, physical resistance. The Gutter Runners are just more of... Whoops, I don't know why the Empire's here. Oh, Huntsmen, that's right. We'll talk about them in a second. Gutter Runners are just more of everything. You can see literally plus all stats from Ungor Raiders, so clearly a tier up in terms of unit. But still, are they worth 750? You look at Huntsmen, and I mean, Huntsmen have a much better ranged attack, but they are less good in melee, obviously, and they're significantly slower. So you pay a premium, I think, for those melee stats. Does it end up being worth it? A little bit what I talked about last time in my Gutter Runners video, because Lothar and Seaguard are a little bit of an exception because they're anti-large and they actually have pretty legit defensive stats. Like Thunderers, Corlers, also, again, higher armor. They're somewhat of an exception, but, generally you don't want your ranged units... Well, I would say most of the time, you don't want your ranged units in melee, and paying for that extra melee prowess when really you just don't want them fighting in melee at all is a little bit wasted if they don't end up using it much. Again, Lothar and Seaguard are a little bit of an exception because the hybridization you pay for is so good in that you have anti-large charge defense, which counters the typical counter of skirmishers, which is light cavalry. Anyway, kind of get into the weeds a little bit. Actually, let's keep Lothar and Seaguard up because as a hybrid type unit, I would say their kit is substantially better, but for 100 more points, Gutter Runner Slingers, you get the snare nets and kind of somewhat interchangeable stats. Like, the speed is definitely not worth the melee defense, especially when you consider martial prowess on top of that. I mean, you do get certainly more unit models, which is helpful, and even with martial prowess, the same attack, which is fine. But of course, the anti-large does completely change that calculation for any type of large unit. Ammunition's similar. Damage output, actually, yeah, 4 and 15. DPS over 10 seconds actually the same, which is interesting to me. But like 650, I think, would be a fine price for the Gutter Runners with the Slingers, and then you reduce the poison variant by the same, 100, maybe only 75. Maybe you make them, 850. I don't know. 850 seems like a nice round number to have them at instead. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. They're decent, better than the 360 shooting ones, but still, I don't think quite where they need to be in terms of cost. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Gutter Runner Slingers used to see a lot of, before like Giselles and Rattling Guns got added, you used to see Gutter Runner Slingers a lot more. Nowadays, not so much. They still are pretty good, though, with certain combinations. I mean, Weeping Blade I talked about in the last video. With Lore of Plague, you've also got Wither, which is an ability a lot of people forget about. Minus 30 or minus 60 in an AoE is very significant, can make the Slingers quite good against armored targets. Yeah, let me know. Slingers in general I am a fan of. Skaven Slaves because they're so cheap. They can be very cost effective. But the Gutter Runners are a nice mix-in sometimes for that extra poison and that extra sort of eliteness to help hold in the case that they do get compromised. What do you think? Let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.